The Springboks may have suffered a painful 33-16 defeat to the All Blacks in the opening test of rugby's greatest rivalry, but history offers a powerful warning to New Zealand. Do not assume that winning the first battle means winning the war, because if there is one thing Rassie Erasmus has demonstrated throughout his coaching career, it is that he rarely makes the same mistake twice. The result at Ellis Park gave Rennie's All Blacks a 1-0 advantage in the 4-test series, ended the Springboks' 12-match winning streak and temporarily returned New Zealand to the top of the world rugby rankings. But the story of this rivalry is far from finished. In fact, some of the greatest rugby series in history have shown exactly why a convincing first-test victory can sometimes create a false sense of security. The most famous examples come from the British and Irish Lions, who experienced this lesson in Australia in 2001 and again in New Zealand in 2017. In 2001, the Lions won the opening test against the Wallabies, and only days later found themselves 16 points behind the Brumbies before producing a remarkable comeback in Canberra. Austin Healey scored a late try and Matt Dawson converted from the touchline, creating an atmosphere of huge confidence around the touring side. The momentum appeared unstoppable, and with players such as Martin Johnson, Johnny Wilkinson, Brian O'Driscoll, Jason Robinson, Richard Hill, Scott Quinnell and Keith Wood in the squad, the Lions looked capable of completing a famous series victory. But the Wallabies had other ideas. Australia recovered, won the next 2 tests and overturned the expectations created by the opening match. That history is relevant because the current All Blacks have just experienced their own confidence-building midweek victory after beating the Lions 41-35 at Ellis Park. At first glance, the result looks like another reason for Rennie and his players to feel extremely confident heading into the second test against the Springboks in Cape Town. New Zealand trailed the Lions 35-17 but produced an extraordinary comeback, scoring 4 unanswered tries during the final half hour to win 41-35. Ethan Blackadder was particularly impressive, scoring 2 tries, while Rieko Ioane and Emoni Narawa also made strong contributions. Perhaps most importantly, Richie Mo'unga returned to the black jersey and showed flashes of the quality that has made him one of New Zealand's most accomplished fly-halves. Rennie was understandably delighted, describing Blackadder as phenomenal, and the All Blacks finished the match without picking up another major injury. On paper, that looks like an ideal preparation for the second Springboks test, but Rassie Erasmus will be looking at the situation very differently. The Springboks coaching staff will not simply look at the final score from the first test and accept that New Zealand were the superior team in every department. In fact, legendary Springboks lock Victor Matfield has already argued that South Africa dominated important areas of the match, particularly at scrum time, while failing to capitalize on their attacking opportunities. That is exactly the kind of information Rassie Erasmus will be studying. The Springboks did not lose because they were completely overwhelmed from the first minute to the last. They lost because New Zealand were far more ruthless when their opportunities appeared, while South Africa repeatedly failed to turn pressure into points. That distinction could be extremely important in Cape Town. Rennie's All Blacks will arrive with confidence, but they should also understand that Erasmus is unlikely to allow the same tactical and execution errors to happen again. This is where the history of the British and Irish Lions in 2017 becomes particularly relevant. The Lions were heavily beaten by the All Blacks in the first test of that series, then produced a dramatic midweek performance against the Hurricanes, building a 23-7 lead before eventually allowing New Zealand's franchise side to fight back. At the time, the result appeared to damage the touring team's confidence, and many observers questioned whether Sam Warburton's Lions had any chance of recovering against the world champions. But once again, appearances were deceptive. The Lions returned for the second test. Sonny Bill Williams was sent off and the visitors produced a famous victory in Wellington. The All Blacks lost at home for the first time since 2009, while New Zealand failed to score a try at home for the first time in 15 years. Suddenly, Maro Itoje became one of the heroes of the series, and the Lions went from supposedly beaten tourists to genuine contenders. The lesson is obvious. A midweek result does not necessarily predict what will happen in the next test. That is particularly true when the 2 matches involve completely different levels of intensity, tactical preparation, and emotional pressure. The All Blacks' victory over the Lions was valuable because it exposed players to South African conditions, physicality, and pressure. But the second Springboks test will be an entirely different challenge. Rassie Erasmus will have spent the week identifying every weakness from Ellis Park, and his players will have had time to process the disappointment of losing a match they believed they could win. The Springbok coach is renowned for making adjustments, and that could be the biggest concern for Rennie. The All Blacks may have surprised South Africa in the opening test, but they will now face a Springboks team that knows exactly what happened. Handré Pollard could provide greater control at fly half, the attacking structure could be adjusted, and the breakdown strategy may be different. The Springboks also have the psychological advantage of knowing they created enough opportunities to trouble the All Blacks' defense. Their challenge is simply to finish those opportunities. New Zealand, meanwhile, will want to avoid becoming too comfortable after 4 straight victories over United Rugby Championship opposition during their South African tour. Those wins have provided excellent preparation, but franchise rugby is not test rugby, and Rennie knows that the intensity rises dramatically when the All Blacks face South Africa. The first test proved exactly that. Every scrum, breakdown, kick, and collision carried enormous significance, and the pressure was amplified by a packed Ellis Park crowd. Cape Town will bring a different atmosphere, but the intensity will remain. New Zealand will also have to consider their scrum problems from the first test. Oxench, Malcolm Marx, and Wilco Louw caused serious problems for the All Blacks pack, and if Rennie's forwards cannot establish parity, the pressure will eventually become difficult to withstand. The Springboks will also want more from their attacking backs. Damian Willemse, Jesse Kriel, Damien de Allende, and Kurt Lee Arends possess enough quality to punish defensive mistakes, while the return of experienced players can help provide the composure that was missing at crucial moments in Johannesburg. At the same time, New Zealand have their own weapons. Cam Roygaard remains one of their most dangerous attacking players. Ardie Savea provides immense physicality and leadership, Will Jordan is capable of turning half chances into tries, and Jordie Barrett has shown that he can influence the match in almost every area. The return of Richie Mo'unga adds another layer of intrigue, particularly if the All Blacks decide to use his experience to control important moments later in the series. But the biggest question is whether New Zealand can reproduce the ruthless efficiency that won them the first test. South Africa will almost certainly create pressure again. The question is whether the Springboks can finally convert it. This is why Rassie Erasmus will not be overly concerned by the headlines surrounding the 33-16 result. Coaches at this level do not simply look at the final score. They study the reasons behind it. Erasmus will know that his side gave the All Blacks too many opportunities and failed to score enough when they were in dangerous positions. He will also know that some of those problems can be corrected. A better decision here, a cleaner pass there, more patience in the opposition 22 and greater discipline could completely change the next test. The Springboks have already demonstrated that they can dominate the physical contest, and that gives them a platform from which to rebuild. The challenge now is turning dominance into points. For Rennie, the danger is assuming that because his team successfully punished South Africa once, the same formula will automatically work again. Rennie has done an excellent job restoring positivity to the All Blacks, and the players clearly believe in the direction he is taking them. But Rassie Erasmus is a coach who thrives on solving problems. The longer the series continues, the more information both coaching teams will collect, and that means every test will become a tactical chess match. The opening victory belongs to New Zealand, and it was a thoroughly deserved victory, but the Springboks have 3 opportunities remaining to respond. The history of the British and Irish Lions demonstrates that a first test defeat does not necessarily predict the outcome of a series, while the 2001 Lions story demonstrates that even winning the opening match does not guarantee momentum will last. The 2017 Lions showed that a team can be written off one week and become the hero of the next. That is why the All Blacks must remain cautious. They have momentum, confidence, and a 1-0 series advantage, but they are now facing a wounded Springboks team coached by Rassie Erasmus, and that may be a dangerous combination. South Africa will not need to reinvent everything. They need to correct the details that cost them the opening test. They need to take the opportunities that appear, maintain their scrum pressure, improve their attacking execution, and avoid giving New Zealand easy momentum. If they achieve those things, the second test could be dramatically different from the first. And if Rassie Erasmus has taught the rugby world anything during his time with the Springboks, it is that setbacks are often followed by adjustments. The All Blacks have won the opening battle, but they have not won the rivalry. Rennie and his players will travel to Cape Town knowing that the next version of the Springboks could be far more clinical, far more disciplined, and far more dangerous. The first test belonged to New Zealand, but the response from South Africa could define the entire rugby's greatest rivalry series. History says never draw conclusions too early, and with Rassie Erasmus preparing his next move, the All Blacks should know that the biggest challenge may only just be beginning.